In today's video we're going to be doing an initial unboxing and review of a tool that we're pretty well all familiar with, which is a drill press. This is the 8-inch edition that is a 5-speed variant from good old Harbor Freight. And the tool line is called the Central Machinery, is the brand name for it. So what you'll have on the box, which as with a lot of Harbor Freight tools, will have like 3 or 4 different distinctions for it. So this is a benchtop drill press. 8 inches is the depth of throat that you're able to make an appropriate drill through any material that you're choosing to use a drill press on. This one has a work light with it. Like I said, it is a 5-speed variable. And this one goes from 620 RPMs all the way up to 3100 RPMs. Pretty good range there. Good old 620 to 3100. You can get a lot done with that. And one of the benefits to this model that I've seen a few different other people do down the road is if they wanted a more freestanding or a taller one, you do have the ability to swap out the back pole just by going down to a steel shop. You can usually get one of those, fabricate one. A lot of people have them laying around. So if you wanted to, and you're good with the horsepower and the capabilities of the drill press, you can extend the length of it from a benchtop. Kind of an odd side note there. But this one I got for Christmas. My buddy of mine has been letting me borrow his for a while. And I enjoy it enough, but I'm always a little hesitant to use it right off the bat for a lot of my projects because it's not mine. So I don't want to throw it under too much hard stress when it's not your own property kind of deal. So for Christmas he decided he wanted to get me one. So I just did an initial kind of cut open the top of it. I actually haven't gone into it as much. I wanted to do a review on it and see from the get-go, because all the ones I've used of these have already been pre-assembled. So I'm curious how hard it is to assemble. I'm curious on what all comes in the box, and kind of give you a glimpse of that. And this one was also purchased not just a few weeks ago, so this will give you the most up-to-date for when this video gets uploaded of what the box currently comes with, because with good old Harbor Freight, a lot of times those renditions will change. Certain extra little things will change for what tools you get with it, or just how the actual drill press itself looks. So some of the other reviews that are up, that are 5 and plus years old, will have a differentiation of the motor speed, components that go into it. So this kind of gives you a little bit more of, and myself, the ability to know what's in a current model and what all it comes with. So follow along. We're going to tear into it, get it all set up, go through some tests on different types of wood. I have some harder woods and then I have softer woods, and kind of doing a little bit of the things you can do with it and changing the RPMs and speed on it. And a lot of this also depends on what type of drill bits you use with the drill press. So you can't necessarily say that it doesn't cut so good in this regard or that regard without trying a couple drill bits. So I'll try to go through a little bit of a change up through that, and we'll see how it performs. I've used them before, and I've used this particular model before, so I know what I'm in for the most part, but we're just going to kind of go from a brand new perspective versus a lot of ones I've used have been older or used for a bit. So we'll see how it works. Alright, so give you a quick rundown on this item here. So this is considered an all-purpose bench mount drill press for home or shop use. Professional accessories include a built-in work light and a tilt table. The bench mount drill press features an adjustable depth stop with gauge and formed steel base and head for optimal durability. Adjustable table locks in place, depth stop with gauge, stamped steel base and table, rotates 360 degrees and tilts 45 degrees left and right. Heavy duty ball bearing motor, which I can attest I've put this thing through its paces before on the buddy of mine, within reason, and prior use of another one as well through a different friend that I was a lot more rigorous on because he'd had it for quite some time and told me to, and was perfectly fine with it. Kind of a side note. This works off of 100 or 120 volt, so you're not going to have to try to upgrade your power shop or garage or anything. Any normal outlet should be able to substantiate enough power to use this. So if you were having to move throughout the house, if you're doing home like work on your kitchen, work on your bathroom, and you needed a drill press in that room, this is nice and mobile enough. It still has a little bit of weight to it, so it's not going to wobble around and be super light on its feet and constantly move on you. It'll stay in place as you drill through just about anything. So that's one of the other benefits I like about it, is I can keep it mobile, especially in a small shop like this. That definitely helps me out. So its minimum speed is technically a little bit more than 620. So on the website it'll say 760 for its RPM on the low end, which I can kind of attest. This does seem to move a little bit faster on its low end speed than what it's kind of commercialized. And for its top speed, it's just under 3100. at 3,070 RPMs. So it moves a little slower in one regard and a little faster in another regard. Is a good way to say it. This is a third of a horsepower, so it can go through most everything, but you're not necessarily going to be getting this for the practicality and use of drilling through stuff like 1-inch thick bar steel or anything like that. That's not the intended use for this item. For me being a woodworker, I can use this all the way up to hickories and oaks perfectly fine, take my time with it, and just work through with a good, nice, sharp drill bit, and I'll feel perfectly confident with this item. And we'll kind of go through some tests on that, and I do have some harder woods, even, you know, just walnuts, ash, other types too. So we'll do that here in just a second. So the speeds that it has are 5. The product height is 22 5/8 is what they say on their site. I'll double check that in a second once we have it assembled. Product length is 17 inches. Product weight is 32 pounds, which I can attest this is about 32 pounds. With the packaging, it's a little bit heavier at the moment. Shipping weight, it says, is 27 pounds, which doesn't quite make sense. Product width is 7.5 inches. The spindle taper is a B16. Spindle speed, it says, is at 620, 1100, 1720, 2340, and 3100. Which, as we saw earlier from its max and minimum speeds, that it's technically a little bit faster and a little bit slower in one regard or another. Stroke length for it is 2 inches. Table dimensions is 6 1/4 inches by 6 1/8 inches. And the 45 degree, I can attest to, does work pretty good. There are some different give and takes that you get with the 45 degree angle, of course. It has an 8-inch swing capability, and all that little bit of the basic information that you can read from the box or the website. Let's get tearing into it. Take down the axe for this one. I feel like I can keep bumping it. Alright, so first opening the box, you have your instructions manual. And it's a nice little sleeve, so that way, as I have a dusty shop, that'd be one thing to kind of tear into and read through. I've already read through this one in the past, so I'm not going to really go through it too much. Well, actually, let's go through it a bit. So here it is. Alright, so looking up in here, as with most everything, it has a safety. It can do 125 VAC, 3-prong plugs. This does need a ground plug, so if you have paper lines or a variety of other types of older 2-prong setup of power, you will want to not only upgrade your power for most power tools, but this tool in particular I have noticed. I did try an older setup way back when, and it does have a weird power fluctuation without having that ground. Alright, so once we get past the safety setup or safety page, we'll go into the setup in here. So it looks like just a basic setup here. Column piece, bolts, washers, and the base. Then we add on the table, sliding it over the column, tightening on the pivot lever. So it has just a little like twister on the side. If you're not looking at a floor model, I've looked at it. You can kind of see here in the picture on your main little table. Or actually, I can pull it out. This will just tighten onto the column based on it's actually threaded into the steel. This looks like it's all cast steel. And nice. On the older models, they actually just kind of lightly brushed on your numbers here and then had just a hard kind of like cut into the steel for your 0 degree mark. And on here they actually have the same kind of line set up. We actually have a physical nameplate attached. You can kind of see here with each of the varying degrees on here, up to 45 in each direction, 0 in the center. It has a mild oil on it so it won't rust, but it has a good coating on the outside of it, so that way you don't get any surface rust at all, but then you still have a nice clean machined top on here. And this one seems a little bit better. So for your adjustments, you will need to loosen this nut here, so that way it can go left or right, that 45 degrees, and then you'll have to retighten this. That's the only real thing that's kind of a little bit of annoying, is that this bolt, you actually have to have a physical separate tool to adjust it one way or the other. It's not like on the back here where you can just twist and untwist to tighten and loosen. Alright, kind of moving on here a bit. So in here is your chuck. It comes with its own little key. They're heavily oiled for transportation and storage for quite some time, as with most Harbor Freight tools. So just a standard kind of chuck key, which is nice. Has a little bit of a longer kind of pivoting capability. You can actually hold all 3 fingers on, which is nice. A lot of the ones I'm used to have just enough for 1 finger and half a finger on the other side for like your old style drills. This one actually is a little bit longer. Alright, so pulling out the chuck, pretty standard chuck, nice and easy to move, very well oiled. And it states on the side here, this is a 1.5 to 13 millimeter B16. So for your spindle, it's a B16. So you can adjust these, take these out. I've seen a couple different people swap out different models of these types of chucks to be either a lot larger of a size or a lot smaller of a size. A lot of people use these for jewelry, and other people will use these for largely boring holes through different types of wood. Some people use them for tile work too, depending on what you get. And you can also swap this out just going off of a B16 spindle. You can actually purchase different spindles for this from Harbor Freight, or you can just buy them off of Amazon and they will attach, which is nice. Alright, got our base plate. Same thing, has a film with quite a bit of oil on it. I'll be wiping a lot of this oil off just because the sawdust in this shop, I'll keep a mild sheen on stuff or I'll wipe it down with WD-40, but keeping this much kind of grease or oil on it is not necessarily beneficial once you've unboxed it and it's no longer sitting in the back storage room. Alright, still in top layer, we've got our 3, well, I call them knobs, but they're feed handles. And this one actually has a little bit more of like a hardened plastic, but kind of a rubber feel to it. So a little bit of a grip, and it's a little bit more rounded on this model. So that's a little bit nicer than the last one I was using, or even the one prior to that. They've done a few little upgrades to it for sure. It's injected molded plastic going over a shaft of steel, and threads look to be good and cut too. A couple of these models in the past used to always have little burrs or cast marks on them, but these actually seem to be a lot better than prior models in the past where you have burrs you have to kind of go through and sand off, and a lot of times that's what the price point was. Let's see here. Opening the rest of the bag here. Each of these, since they have metal components in them, also have that same good old grease in and throughout. So you get the 3 feed handles in the first bag. You get a steel screw with a plastic end piece on that. I think I know where that goes. You get your 3 bolts for the base here, as well as you get 3 flat washers and 3 lock washers. There we are. Damn it. And you get 2 different sizes of Allen keys or hex keys, as well as the rear little spindle bolt that goes through and tightens in. I'll just kind of stick that in there preemptively. So that's there to help tighten down. So that's what comes on the first part of the foam. Alright, now we're down into the actual working main part mechanics of the drill press. So we have our center shaft. Get that with that. Nice and oily. Alright, so looking on the inside of here, ooh, nice. So they have coated it. When I worked in construction, we used to have to do this so we wouldn't get differentiations of types of metal. There's a certain type of paint you can get. This one, it's going to be kind of hard to see, has a red paint on the inside of it here. Here's a little fleck of it. And this is meant to keep anti-rust, essentially. So they actually coated the inside of it for anti-rust, which is awesome, because a couple of them don't always do that. And in these newer models, it looks like they're starting to do that, which is nice. So same kind of thing, machined nice and smooth and flat on the bottom here. And then they have a protective black paint coat on here. Looks like a little scuffing, which is kind of usual a little bit shipping this over. A lot of these are produced in China and assembled in a different country, or they're kind of mass-produced this one component from China or a variety of other locations, and then it's all assembled in one box and then shipped to the United States. But this seems to be very nice. So I will grab a wrench here in a quick sec, but we will start our assembly. So it just kind of shows a picture, but set down the washers. I always like to throw the lock washer on here so I don't lose it. Alright. Threading pretty good. Nice and easy threading on these so far. Wow, that's a lot better than some of the other stuff I've got. So in the past I've had, like I said, some burrs on the threads, and I've had some inconsistencies with just the machining on these tools. But this one seems to be rather really nice and easy to get in there. I can put them in pretty deep and far before I hit the like squash washer or lock washer. And now I'm just pressing against the lock washer for pressure. So I'll grab a tool here in a second, like I said, for that. Those guys, that guy. So the next component would be this sliding over the center column. I'm just gonna go mid. And I'm actually kind of happy about this being on the left side because I'm left-handed. So. There we go. So, now for the main heavy component, the whole motor assembly. So this is the girth or weight of the entire box right here. Ooh. Set the box on the bottom here. There's nothing else in the bottom of the box at all. So here is the motor assembly. Actually looks really nice. See the spindle on here, had some kind of a wax paper with the grease on it. This is probably actual grease versus everything else has just been an oil up to this point. You got your work light off to the side. Power cord. So this whole assembly should just slide on top. Nice. Drops in place. Alright, let's see if there's anything along the way I'm missing here. Alright, so the screws in the back here. Kind of turn it a bit so you can see. So we have two bolts that have a inverted or female hex that these can go into and tighten down. So I'm going to get this. See if I can get that pretty well straight. There we are. Tighten down those two bolts. There we go. Don't need to absolutely kill it. If it does wobble on you, you can always adjust it later, but better safe to get it snug so you don't overstrip it. So that was the large Allen key. So, oh yeah, so this component is actually for the top here. So I'll kind of lean this over a bit so you can see. So on the top here, there's a little hole with this little plastic guy will affix into here, and then the overlay of it will help lock into this little spring steel piece right here to help hold and latch the top on. So I'll install that real quick. Sorry for jiggling the workbench at all. I figured this is where it went, but I was gonna wait till I got a little bit further just in case there is some other component I forgot or if it was already on there type deal. Which, since it's plastic, I'm not gonna really over tighten this too much. I don't want to shatter it for this little handle on top. So looking at the inner workings here, I can show you as well. You have a belt. Number on here is K26. Then in red you also have C0532. So that's probably tension, thickness, and length of it. On the inside here you do get a diagram. This is my manufacture date as well. 2009 was its manufacture. So this is the 2009 manufacture date. Model number on here should be the TL0998. Then we have our spindle speeds for our belt. So in the absolute bottom is going to be our slowest speed at 620, or as it was saying on there, minimum speed should be, I think it was 726 or something like that. Mid-range, so next step up right here would be 1100 RPMs. And then in the third position where it's at currently is the 1720 speed. Next step up would be the 2340 RPM speed. And then finally at the very top will be 3100 RPM speed. And to adjust it, there's just a simple little knob that you twist. It adjusts how far out this is. It's a little loose, and then you can just push down and rotate this spindle, watching your fingers as you do so, and it will pop down onto one, do the same on the other side. It'll adjust it down, do the same for going up in speed, and then when you have it at the speed you want, you just simply adjust this until you get tension on the belt. Right now it's super loose because I have it super loose on the side here, but once you feel satisfied, let's see, is it actually a twister? That. So you can actually just loosen this and compress it with your hands is a better way to do it. So once you loosen this, there is a spring that's supposed to tension it for you to make it tighter. But when you loosen it, it's kind of press in a bit with your hand, and then you can rotate to pop down the speed. There we go. Same thing goes on the other side. Gently watch your hand, rotating, pushing the belt down. It'll pop down to its lower RPM. So now we're at 1100. I can go down to its slowest speed, which I was kind of curious to see. So here, make sure it's loose. Press in. There we go. Feels nice and tight there. So its lowest speed is kind of a hard one to achieve a bit at first. I should have done the small one first. Actually, probably a little easier to advance this and then loosen it. Alright, so give me 1 second and I'll adjust that back. Alright, so it took me a second and kind of my own folly here a bit. So when you're adjusting speed, always start adjusting your speed on this side, on the smaller spindle, before doing the larger spindle. So I did the larger spindle first to drop down into the lowest speed possible from where we were at, and it ended up causing it to bind at such a point that I had to grab and flex and push up to get it to pop back up to the speed it was in, and then drop this side down, then this side, and left the adjustment screws super loose, and I had pushed in as hard as I could, holding this side with the other hand, grabbing this side and trying to lift up. And I would have left it filming me do that, not a big deal, but because of how I was putting my hands on it, I didn't want you guys to not be able to see what I was doing to get it to adjust one way or the other. So now It's where it's in its lowest position. Like I said, I'll start with that one, kind of do a couple of things because I was curious to see how this was in its low speed. So if you're using something that's a harder material like steel, or if you're using something that is like a hardwood or something like that, you'd normally want this on a lower RPM. So just kind of the same idea as like a tractor. You lower how fast it's moving, and then you can up its torque by doing so. So this should have its maximum torque setting with its least amount of speed setting as well, is essentially what you're trying to replicate with this. So to get tension, you can just kind of pull with your palm, stick your fingers into here. And it also notice and look on the inside, second up from the bottom, on this spindle here, or this cone shape here for it, is where your littlest hex key actually works. It slides into a spot that they had cut out, and they have threaded, so that way there is a same kind of setup here with these little bolts that have the hex in them. That's what this one's for, to lock this onto the motor spindle. So if ever you needed to replace this or swap this out, which you can buy these components online, then that is how you do so, as well as loosening your belt tension, dropping it to this lowest position, or just completely popping it off, which is very possible to do right now with how loose it is. So anyway, to get it tight, pull it, and you don't want it to be absolutely crushing this, but you don't want it to be so tight there we are. Just a little bit of bounce, nothing too crazy with the belt. I've had some of these I've used in the past, the Tall Craftsman and a couple of the other Delta brands and such, where the belt is just so loose in there and so worn out, but at those points, because of those models, you can't find a belt. And good old, Farmer John type guy that I'm working with, it's like, you know what, can't find a belt, just kind of tighten the best you can. You get it real tight, and as you're turning it on, there's no cover, of course. This is all just spitting in your face as you're trying to work with it, and the belt's just flopping the whole time. So I've seen some of these in really loose configurations still work. Granted, you don't want to have that, but you also don't want to have it so tight that you're putting so much tension on the motor that you end up burning your motor out just trying to do simple tasks. So kind of an in-between. Same thing with most belts, just kind of in a little bit. I'll actually look through the manual and see if it gives you a belt tensioning suggestion here. It is approximately 1/2 inch at its center. So at its center, we push in 1/2 inch. Perfect. And that's where it gets nice and tight, but you don't have to like absolutely push into it super hard. But it's not one of those things you just lightly press on with like your pinky, or very minimal. You actually still have to put some tension on it. That 1/2 inch deflection, or compression is another term you can use for it. And that lets you know that you're right where you need to be. It's nice and tight. All right. So I will tighten down these bottom bolts here. So I went and searched from a prior tool purchase. I got this nifty little 10 and 13. I want to say this was the Wen. This was either the Wen or it was the Bauer. I can't remember at the moment. If you guys watch the other reviews, you can let me know in the comments. But anyway, this little tool is nice. It's got a 13 on one side and a 10 on the other. And looking at this, these bottom bolts are actually a 13. So give those a tighten real quick. So since this is just injected molded plastic over the steel shaft, which is probably smooth from the get-go, this does rotate. Actually does get tighter though. So I wonder if there's some kind of threading on the inside of these. Yeah, that one's too tight to tell. That is interesting though. They get tighter, so I'm guessing there must be some kind of threading on the other end of this. It's a little too slippery of a shaft for me to be able to get that to take apart there, but it actually does feel like it gets tighter, both this to the shaft and the shaft into the center column for the raising and lowering. So like I said, our setting is on our lowest. There's a nice little piece of rubber that they put here. And oddly enough, another piece over here. So in prior models, they had a hole right here, just kind of a production thing. And a buddy of mine figured that you could throw this in there and it would just always be with the tool. I'm not seeing one of those, so I might actually end up putting one of those in because I just got so used to always having this right where it was just far enough from the belt that it didn't rattle or damage anything, but it always was with the unit. I've seen a couple guys throw in here loose, but eventually they always rattle and end up at a belt, or you hear it clang around in there. Just not good and not safe for the tool at all. But I'm gonna have to look around and see if I have that or a couple other methods. People do the Scotch tape or electrical tape a lot of times to the electrical cord, or duct tape. I'm not a huge fan of that. So this does have, as I noted off earlier, the depth gauge, which is nice. The top piece here is plastic. Not that that's a problem at all. With it reading depth, you shouldn't be hitting it. Then it gives you your measurement for absolute zero right now with it all the way up. And then it can go down to a depth of 2 inches. And you can use these 2 nuts, find your setting where you want it, and then just counter both of them so that they tighten on each other, and that holds it in place. Pretty simple and straightforward. Installing the chuck, here we are. Loosen the pivot lever, and slide the table up to the column within 6 inches. It's about 6 inches. So loosen the pivot lever and slide the table up the column within 6 inches of the spindle. Tighten the pivot lever right here. Open the jaws of the chuck to their maximum amount. So right there is maximum. Using the spindle chuck key. Alright, so here's the spindle chuck key. So maximum amount, don't torque it. Put a piece of scrap wood on the table to protect the chuck nose. I just so happen to have a piece of 2x right here. So 2 inches. So within 6 inches, I'm going to go up a little bit more. See what they're going to go with here. There's that. Put a piece of scrap wood between the table and there, ensuring all parts are thoroughly clean, dry, and burr free. Clean and dry. Well, it's got grease on it, so I'll give that a light wipe real quick. I need a huge amount, but just enough of a little glaze on there to kind of help the situation out. Well, I'll wipe a little more. Really put some thick grease on here. Alright, so put this on with the scrap wood directly beneath it. Use the feed handles to gently lower the spindle so it's just entering the opening of the chuck. Examine the chuck from all sides. Make sure it is properly aligned with the spindle. Using the feed handles, insert the spindle all the way into the chuck, pressing the chuck nose hard against a piece of scrap wood on the table to ensure that the chuck is in place. So you just kind of squash it in there. And make sure there's one little piece, of course I have to say something, of sawdust on the inside of the chuck. There it is. Alright. Really good. Good. Alrighty. Maneuver this up so it doesn't move it as hard. Things looking straight. Chuck's not dropping anymore, which is good. Judging on how much it went in to where I saw the tapering start for the actual jaws. That looks to be good. And the other thing that I like about this is this has a coating on the actual main arm that holds everything in place. Has an actual coating on it this time. A couple of the models I've seen before just kind of have a flat cast mark, same kind of black paint that they used on a lot of it, but this has a more of a metallic gunmetal look to it. It actually seems to be a very good substantiated coating I have on here. So everything seems to be working nice and smoothly. All the handles are nice and tight. Here's the work light on this side. It's the last thing I haven't unwrapped yet. And it's just a basic couple rubber bands holding a zip little bag on here. Some foam around the bulb. Bulb looks to be good and intact. And this light actually seems different than the other ones I've looked at. So you have a dust cover slash just a shade, so that way it's not just a bright light in your eyes. This seems to snake and adjust pretty good. Although oddly enough, there is a straight, or well, a 90-degree piece of metal in here that isn't flexible, and then it flexes just after it. So you can see that there. This can flex. This is solid to about right there. I'm guessing that's some new design change. You can see the copper in this one, and the porting on this motor is a lot larger, so it gets a lot better airflow. Something more will be that you'll get a lot more dust in there, but at least it's a little easier to get out with the air compressor, so that's nice. Oh yeah, that's another thing. So for the cord it comes with, it's not super short, which is nice, and it's not so long you feel like you're just going to have this coiled up thing of cable inside. The cable looks to be, oh heck, let's see, got a tape measure here. I just kind of hook that. There. So our extension cable length, pretty tight. This one's got some looseness to it. Just check. 6 foot. So this is actually 6 foot of cable that we have here, which is a good distance, I feel. Let's plug it in real quick. Make sure it's off. Okay, the light came on. Switch for it was on this side for the last model. The switch for it. Is it on it? Ah. So this model, the power switch is actually right here, and then above it is the. That seems pretty good. Nice. So I can turn the light off. The switch is just down here on this model. Prior model, it was over here. So for the this model here, which this one's designation, forgot to add, is the 62520 model from Harbor Freight, which they'll ship just slight variants and have a differentiated model. So if you were to look up coupons for this, that is one thing, major point I forgot to add. So this normally is $69.99. On sale, it can drop down a little bit from that, but with your coupon, which if you just go into, I think it's harborfreightcoupons.com, where a variety of individuals will consistently update whatever new coupons that they have for that month that aren't expired yet, they'll upload for it. Let me throw a drill bit in here or two, and let's drill some stuff. For the test here, I have a couple different types of wood. So I have a chunk of ash. This one, I'm not quite sure. It should be another one of the hardwood family. And I've got just the normal pine. And then for you guys, just because it keeps being asked of it, the main reason I don't use oak is I am highly allergic. It makes my hands bust out in the hives and such. But for your viewing pleasure, I made sure to have a piece of oak, so that way you guys can know how well it does on it. I'm just going to be a little extra cautious while doing so. In fact, actually, preemptively, I'm going to throw a mask on, just so my lungs don't hate me, or I have to go to some kind of, get an EpiPen or something like that. I like breathing. And now for that familiar issue that everyone with glasses or sunglasses have with our modern world. I can't see anything. Fogged up like crazy. Alright. So, click on that little work light. Kind of keep this out a little bit. We'll use the pine first. Kind of go through with that. Kind of clamp it down here real quick. There you go. Alright. Oop, I did not tighten that in right. There we go. That was definitely user error. I didn't see that it had gotten between 2 of the 3 prongs and tightened down improperly. There we go. That's nice and straight. All the way through the 2x4. Wow. Alright. And the bit that I'm using on here is a wood or steel bit, so that way it kind of covers the bases for everyone. The hole is very clean on the entry, and on the exit there's a little bit more of a tear out on it. This is an older 2x4. Kind of pull that down so you can hear me. So that's a older 2x4, but did pretty good on that one. I might even try a Forstner bit on this too, just give you guys a little bit of an idea. Alright, so hopping it to the ash. Okay, throw that like that. There. Wow, this is like butter. So, that was smooth, crazy nice. A little bit of tear out on the end, but that entry is just perfect, which is the drill bit mainly. But that lower RPM, it just barely any tension, it went right through it. So I'll try a little bit more of a hardwood. I'll go like that. This is an older clamp. It's a little finicky with me. There we are. Nice and solid. And this isn't actually, as you can see, bolted or anything. So I think we'll throw this just to be on the safe side as I hit more harder woods. More of a securing clamp. Alright, this seems a little more sturdy. Like nothing. Nice little spring action. Alright. So for that one, nice and easy, no problems. Super smooth hole. Didn't scorch it at all. It's just, wouldn't even need sanded in there at all. So that's on more of a hardwood. Like I said, sadly I am a scraps guy, so I'm not sure exactly what type of hardwood this is. I can almost remember. Alright. And for this one, I'm going to turn some dust collection, try to help alleviate some future problems here a bit. Go. So this next bit I'm going to turn on my dust collection, so I apologize for the audio. Alright, so not too bad. That was actually same thing, like butter on that nice low RPM. Just went through it like a tractor. Barely had to apply any pressure. It was more the spring that I was kind of fighting against so that it didn't spring up too fast on me. But otherwise, that's just no real resistance. A little 3rd horsepower motor, and it just went through the oak like it was nothing. And like I said, this is just a good steel bit. I'm trying to think if I have a scrap of steel that'd be wide enough for me to use on this. So I'll use a little bit of oil on this one. That on. Alright. Over there. And for this one, I think I'll utilize actually. Got a C-clamp here. Sawdust, imagine that. So this is a full bar, that's why I'm kind of going back a little ways, is so that way I can keep as much of it good as possible, but still give you some mild steel test on it. So grab. A little bit of pressure, nothing amazing. Like nothing. I mean, there's resistance. I wasn't just absolutely pressing it down like nothing, but just a little bit of pressure. Nothing major. I oiled it so that way it didn't destroy the bit. Not that 1/8 inch steel would cause that. Mild 1/8 inch steel of that. This isn't hardened steel, but still it gives you an idea. And this I'll actually be using this drill press for to use for one of my projects, and that's what this is for. So I will be using things like 1/8 inch steel, This one I just got from Lowe's. And it is 1 inch by 72 inch flat bar, 1/8 inch steel. So it's your run of the mill Everbuilt plain steel. Yeah, it just went through it, no problem at all. Got the nice little curly shavings here a bit, so it was at the appropriate RPM with the amount of pressure I was giving it. That's one of the tricks I learned from construction is if you start to see it kind of curl cue right up the drill bit, lets you know that you have the appropriate amount of lubrication as well as the appropriate amount of pressure for your RPM that you have set up for your drill press. If it's a little faster, you could push a little harder and make it go through a little quicker, but you're still never going to want to just absolutely slam down and hang on it as you're drilling through it. That'll burn up your bit, or it'll cause a lot of unnecessary stress on your motor, shortening the life of your motor. So, little side note there if you didn't know that. So one more test for you. I have this tree in my yard. I'm not quite sure. I think it is the female version of those trees with the large spikes on them. I think it's called honey locust or something like that, or honeysuckle, no. Well, the term escapes me, but it is the female version of the tree that has those large spikes on them. And it's a very hard wood. For those of you who've had to deal with it, you know what I'm talking about. So this is what it looks like once you cut through it. It's rather very cool and kind of gorgeous wood design, but my bandsaw and a variety of other things have gotten their blades quite dull just going through cutting out either coasters or a variety of things we've used this for. And it's a wonderful wood, but it is definitely hard. And it is very hard on tools and such. So I was going to drill a couple holes into this, give you kind of an idea for hardwood, just listening to the motor and such. Nothing. Good drill bit. A little bit tenser as you hit the core. Started to get a little bit of smoke. So it does look like sawdust wasn't ejecting quick enough, so it was kind of cooking the sawdust. Looking inside the hole, I'm not seeing any scorch marks inside of the actual drill hole. Probably just hold this. Get a couple extra little holes here. There we are. Doing really good on this low RPM. So I'm going to adjust the RPM up a little bit and we'll kind of range through and make a couple more holes, see how well it does on that one. Alright, as a kind of quick side note, so the larger spindle in front, you're going to want to put the belt on that side first when you're going up in RPM speed. When you're going down, you want to adjust your rear first for tensioning and everything. Just kind of the two reverse cones that dropping it from a larger size to a smaller size on both ends, but that seems to do a lot better as kind of a side note. So just upping the speed to the 1100 RPMs from what they quoted as the 620. I'll actually start with what we ended with. So we'll start with this guy. Alright. Through it, no problems or issues at all. Adjust this up again. Used to it being on the right side rather than the left. Small things just need to get used to. Let's do the clamping again. Now that's at a higher RPM. holes look identical. Exit wound is a little bit more rough on this one, which going with a little bit of a higher RPM makes sense. But seems to be going good. Okay. So I drilled 2 holes because I forgot I had this hole here it pulled into in the first one, but same thing as the last one. So upping the RPM is causing a little bit more of a tear out, but the entry wound or entry looks really nice still, no problems. A little bit of a raise on the ash. Alright, go with 2x4 real quick. No hesitation, nice and quick. Tear out was actually a little more minimal on the pine. Alright, we'll do this one. Try to be quick with it. Alright, so the oak, same thing, a little more tear out. Entry is still very good. So I can kind of work up through that. We'll kind of skip through and I'll let you know at the end what it ends up being like. Alright, give you a bit of a quick rundown. So for each of the speeds, for the 620, had a bit more tear out than I was expecting on the pine. For the 1100, it was actually a little bit more of a mild amount of tear out. For the 2340, had a bit more tear out. Each of the entry points were very nice on the new drill bit. This was the steel and wood high-speed drill bit, and even though it says high speed, you still want to kind of give it a little bit of pressure, but you're not trying to absolutely just like force that thing through super crazy fast. So when it says high speed, it still means that you need to take a second, kind of go through the pace. Drill press is perfect for that. Continuing on, so we had the 620, 1100, 2340. Pop my little cheat sheet here. Actually, sorry, it was the, let's see, so this one was the 620, then we had the 1100, then on this side was the 1720, then it went to the 2340, and then the finishing was the 3100 RPM on the pine, or just basic stud, 2x4, what have you. On the ash, on the other hand, it was, let's see, yeah, this side. So our first hole was right here, and that was the 620. So its entry wound wasn't, or entry and exit wasn't too bad. Second setup, which was for the 1100 RPM, was a little bit more tear through. I drilled a hole here, but decided to kind of discard that one because there was already kind of a hogged out bit there. So flipping over and going to this side, entry and exit on the 1720 RPM was actually the most clean, oddly enough, on the ash. And then going over to the next setting, which was the 2340, entry, exit, minor tear out, but nothing major at all. And then for the final setting, which was the 3100 RPM, entry left a minor bulge up from entry, just kind of pushed the fibers upward. And then on the exit wound, it was about on par with the 2340 speed. Go on to the next one here. Our first hole at 620, and then we have our second hole down here at the 1100, and then the third hole at the 1720. All entries are good. And then over here at the 2340, exit still about on par. It didn't change too much on the other kind of hardwood. Like I said, not really sure exactly which one this one is, but I know it's a hardwood. It's a lot harder to cut through on the chop saw and on my circular saw. And then 3100 as a finisher, not too bad. As for the oak, which I had to go through that fun of respirator, clean it up and everything like that, just not my favorite wood. It was still definitely harder wood, but it ran through it like a champ. So on the low RPM, 620, it made an entry and exit that was nothing. It was super clean. I mean, there's minor fibers kind of kicking up. For the second setting here, for 1100, there is a mild amount of just a few more fibers kind of grabbing and pulling. On the next setup for the 720, it was a little worse, but then on, oddly enough, the next setting here for 2340 on the RPMs, it got even cleaner. And then for the finisher at 3100, it was still about on par. And each of those, the only thing I thought was kind of odd is it pulled it up and kind of stuck there, and I had to either turn off the drill press or push down firmly. Now if I had this clamped in, it wouldn't have done that, but I was just kind of running through quick on that one. So as for this guy, the honey locust or honeysuckle, the female version of the spiky tree, we'll call it that, I ran through on each of the settings here, again on it, and each one of them seemed to kind of enter and go through it with no real issues or hassles at all. So our lower RPM, so 620, 1100, and then over here we have our 720, then it was 2340, and then I did 2 of the finishers out at 3100, and all of them seem identical. Like I said, it got a little harder towards the end, but actually in the upper ranges, not much. I didn't really sense it at all, which was kind of odd for the last 3 out of the main setup. It didn't seem any real difficult at all. But the first 2 seemed to have, like, as soon as I got down to this core, that's the hardest part of the tree, kind of had to put a little more pressure. It didn't bog down the motor at all, which was awesome. And it just handled it like a champ. So if you're doing hardwoods, it did phenomenal. And I did the low speed on the steel because I just don't feel that you would want to go at a higher speed. So that's where I'm going to be a little biased. I can't up it. It'll be a little more screechy and it'll require more oil and it'll take a little more time. But if you go on a lower RPM and just keep a steady pressure with a little bit of oil, it's less pressure on the motor and a lot less hard on your drill bit, and you'll still get through it. I've done it before in the medium speed. I actually did that for my last project, like I said, with the other model. And I can tell you it just kind of squeaks a little bit more, requires more oil, and it flings a lot more hot metal shavings. So I would myself personally just always drop this down to its lower setting if I was going through mild steel, especially anything thicker than 1/8 inch that I was using. So kind of a side bit there. Another little side note I noticed with adjusting the speed up and down on this. So one of the main suggestions a lot of people said in the comments of other videos and different other videos I kind of looked through to get kind of a broad idea of suggestions of using this method seems to cause this to potentially bend. Doesn't really put too much pressure. It's pulling your armature out a little bit. The way that looks to be the best that I figured, and I'm not the only one that probably figured this out, was this motor swings sideways and then this little post pushes it out for tension. So if you just kind of bring it in to where it's at its loosest setting, make your adjustment on it. So as I'm going down, I do this side, pop it down to 1. If I wanted to leave it there, what I can do is just take my hand, brace off of this center column, and then push backwards with the back of my knuckles, acting as a fulcrum, and I can get that pretty much right where I want for tension. And then all I need to do is kind of increase my grip. That'll naturally push my knuckles forward and give me tension, and then I can use this hand as free to check my slop or deflection to get it right where I want it. And then as I hold that, just use this hand to tighten it, and then I got my deflection the way I want it, and I'm good to go. So again, you would just loosen this up. I would grab the column, probably not your front control board, and then just gently flex the motor inward. You can use this as kind of a flex point, but this is a little too thin a steel for me to feel too comfortable. So you can kind of bend that in, drop again to a different speed. Very simple, very easy. And then just bring your hand in to get it right where you want for tension. And you tighten it down. It is super simple, super easy. And so right now you can see I've got it in the middle setting, so I'm at the 1720 RPM, which should be good for about most things that I'm going to be going through for woods. So in conclusion, this is definitely a really good product for all of my uses, and I've been very much enjoying having the prior one at my disposal to be used on occasion, but now I feel even more invigorated to get a little bit more in-depth with a lot more of my projects and be a little bit more precise with a lot of the holes that I was drilling. I was making do with normal normal tools and normal methods of getting the job done, instead of using a lot more of that extension into a little bit more of the power tools at my disposal. Now I have this fully and legitimately at my hands, ready and available, and now I just got to find a more permanent spot somewhere in my shop for it. I might kind of keep with it underneath the workbenches and then pull it out as needed, but I don't know. We'll see where I can kind of give and take in the shop for that part. You can see here all the holes it was able to drill. What you end up with after it's fully assembled is a little chuck key and the 2 Allen keys for the back of the head, for mounting on the components on the inside here, for taking those spindles off, rather. And the drill press itself works good. And I would say for this tool, for its minor weight portable capabilities, you could still pull this out and use it if you were renovating parts of a house and you needed something inside, but you didn't want to like lug and reset up a whole workshop inside your house to be doing, you know, working with countertops or working with different stuff that you would need precise drilled holes that you would be able to move around a slab of something if you were working like that. That's the first thing that comes to mind, because this can still mount at Forstner bits. That was one thing I forgot to put in there. I've used them quite often on different projects. In some of my other videos, you can look in those content for me using it. And this is something that I was looking at buying, whether my friend got it for me or not, and I had no clue he was going to by any means, which I'm still super stoked that he did. But I knew this is something that you just need in the shop. And between the two, I was looking at the Wen and this guy. And the Wen was also a really good product, like a product that you can order off of Amazon. And I have a bandsaw as such. But I've used this, I really enjoy this, I know it works good. And this is what I would have probably gone with. That had I been given the chance or choice between the two, this would have been my choice, just because I trust it, I know it. If there's any issues, I don't have to wait to send it off and get it like sent back to me and warrantied out through Amazon, which isn't a huge hassle. It's just a wait time. I can go down and talk to an actual person if there's any problems with this product, and I can get it swapped out. It's 30 days with your purchase of your receipt, and you can buy extended warranties past that point with it. So that makes me feel a little more comfortable being able to talk face to face with somebody. There is great customer support for Wen, but out of the two, I'm definitely happy that this is the one I get to kind of keep. The upgrade that I've seen a few people do is, instead of having a basic old school halogen bulb, is they'll swap this one out for an LED. So that's probably going to be the next upgrade, or primary upgrade for this. And then I have a friend with a 3D printer that is looking at, or a resin printer rather, that is going to be printing out a holder for this for me that I might just mount onto the side or something like that. So super stoked about that. The whole method wouldn't have been bad, but if it's something that is a nice piece of plastic I can just mount to the top here and just lock this into and slide it aside, pop it out when needed, I feel a lot better about that. And then I can just always, as I turn it on, immediately feel and know if that's there, or if I sat it down somewhere as such, right here. But yeah, and for $54.99 on sale with coupon, and I think it does go down a little bit more than that. I think it goes down to $49.99 on another coupon sometimes. That's kind of like their Super Saver coupon. This is definitely a phenomenal little drill press. And like I said at the beginning of the video, you can swap out this back bar here and extend this to be a little bit longer. If you want to spend the additional price on the steel to do so, you can make this a lot taller if you're working on a lot larger projects. This is perfect for the size of my shop, and for all my uses with mild steel and wood, this is going to do all of that, as well as plastics. And you can get different types of drill bits that'll be able to do ceramics, and I feel more than comfortable on the very low RPMs to go through ceramics or glass if I had the right burrs or attachments for it. In the video you saw with the Silhouette, I used a burr attachment in here, mounted this down to the top here, and it was able to go through, and I had no issues. Although at that time I will say I didn't adjust the speed like I should have in the actual motor, so I should have dropped that down a bit and would have gotten a lot easier of cuts and a lot better of the end result. The result still looked great, no question there, but side notes. So hopefully you enjoyed this little bit more of like a kind of in-depth-ish look into a product I have had hands on before, so this isn't my first time first hands on, but I am happy to be able to review it and go over it, and hopefully you guys have a bit more of a takeaway from it and know kind of what you're getting into when you open the box from the store. So that way there's no surprises, and it kind of just gives you a little bit more ease of mind. On that rating list, I would definitely put this in the enthusiast grade. This isn't your basic, super plasticky, Black & Decker, my first drill press kind of setup. And 8 inches is still something that you can definitely work around with, and you can extend that bar up to where you can use a lot more depth than just 8 inches. You can actually get this at however long you want at that point. And the motor seems strong and sturdy enough that I would trust it to be able to do most big jobs. Like I said, I wouldn't really feel super confident. I know this would go through it. If I gave it enough time and enough oil, I could go through a single inch or a solid inch of like hardened steel or even mild steel. But that's not your use for this. That's not what you're going for with this. If you're going to be cutting into material like that, you would know you'd want something a lot more heavy duty for that kind of, setup. And so that's where this has its own bracketing. But this I definitely feel outdoes even some of like the Ryobi drill presses and certain lines like that. And that could be kind of a toss up between the two. I haven't had a huge amount of work with the Ryobi. It is a good tool too. But I feel like this one has a lot more steel versus that one has a little bit more plastic. Now, I haven't looked at the amperages and I haven't looked at the power output of the motor, but I definitely feel this is in line with that. This isn't going to be a replacement for a $300+ drill press by any means. You can get some really nice floor ones, even from Harbor Freight, for around $350 to $400, and even sometimes get coupons to get them down as cheap as like $270. That'll do a lot better job at a lot heavier duty stuff, and those I would definitely put through the paces of inch thick material. But that's not what this classification, and 8 inches is what you're really going to be using that for. It's not the practicality or use of it. And that all aside, I'm definitely super happy with the product, and I feel this is going to serve me for years and years to come. I have no doubt in it. It'll do everything I want it to, and I'll take care of it. And I'm not going to be absolutely kicking this down a flight of stairs or anything, so I don't feel this is going to wear out from just use. It would wear out if you were to misuse it, but I feel any tool would do that. Even if it had a $1,200 Festool price on it, you're still going to wear it out if you're going to absolutely abuse it. So, anyway. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button as well. That would help out greatly. We're slowly but surely inching right there next to 1,000 subscribers. When I hit that point, I can hopefully get monetization and start continually pumping out more content and getting a little bit more in-depth, and I can start doing a few more tool reviews, start purchasing a few more tools too. Once I start getting a little bit more or an actual income from this, I can start putting that towards tools and upgrades and start doing that. I have a lot of fun extra things lined out for this year, which is nice and exciting. I'm going to try to see if I can grow the shop into an actual functioning business, and a bit more than just side projects and things for my own enjoyment and liking. I'm going to start extending out in multiple ways, so make sure to hit that notification bell as well, so that way you get updates each time I upload to the channel and each time I come up with something new or try to present something to the masses. So thank you very much for your loyal patronage if you've already been subscribed and have liked the videos in the past, and hope to see you in the next one, and next one after that, next one after that. Leave a comment below if you think I'm doing good, or if there's room for improvement, or if you have any questions on the machine, or any questions therein of different things I've used it for, or if you just have some basic setup questions or anything like that. I'm more than happy to help when I can. So thank you very much. Have yourself a good one. I have a piece of 2x4 right here. So we just pressure this in. Alright, Alright, yes, super precise. I am an absolute genius.